Hi there. It's Charlotte Cheney, and it is September 24th, I think, 2018. And we are going to talk about suicide tonight. Can be a very difficult subject, but it's important that we talk about it. And I've done some research on it, and I've, had experiences around it in my life. And one thing I've learned is it's really important that we talk about it. I put in the notes here the hotline in case you are feeling suicidal ever. 24 hours a day, you can call someone and talk to them. 1-800-273-TALK, 1-800-273-TALK, or 1-800-273-8255. And it's important to talk about it. So I think probably each of us knows someone who has maybe committed suicide or tried to commit suicide, or it just touches a lot of us. And the World Health Organization estimates that nearly 1 million people die each year from suicide. And that is really, really tragic. It also says that it's preventable. And so that's really, really good news. So I wanted to just talk to you a little bit about, particularly if you are someone who is feeling suicidal. First of all, I wanted to tell you that I have felt suicidal many times, actually. So I do think some people are have more of a tendency to feel suicidal, but I do think a lot of people do contemplate it from one time or another. And I know for me, the times I really seriously considered it was when I was in just deep, dire pain and I didn't feel like I could move forward. I didn't think I could get out, and I felt like it was the only way out. I remember feeling like I was underwater, and the only way I could get to breathe would be if I took my life. And thank God that passed. And I never imagined at that time in life that I could have what I have now. And so if you're there, I hope that somehow that will be meaningful to you, that I have been really in a lot of pain before and it passed. And so, hi, Gina. Just being mindful, it can pass. If that is you, it is recommended, and I'm telling you now, tell someone, and I've done it. It's hard. It's so hard to say, boy, I've had thoughts of suicide. But when you tell someone you're not alone, people, obviously, I just told you statistics that 1 million people are going to commit suicide, or have, or could be. So it's important that we talk about it, and you're not the first person who's felt that way if that's how you feel. So you can reach out to a counselor. I'm a coach. You can reach out to a coach. You can just tell someone, and it is okay. Don't be ashamed. If someone you love has committed suicide, this is something I really want to talk to you, because I think often if we love someone that's committed suicide, we feel guilty. We feel like we could have done something. Sometimes someone might even say, it's your fault that I'm doing this. Someone who's real manipulative might do that and blame you and commit suicide. And if that's ever happened to you, and I know it has happened to a lot of people, it is never your fault that someone else took their life. Someone else took their life because they were hurting, because they were incapable of dealing with life. And so if they put that blame on you, I hope and pray that you will get yourself into counseling, and somewhere you can learn the truth. It is not your fault. I have heard people say that suicide is selfish. Oh, well, committing suicide is the most selfish thing you can do. Well, I can understand how it appears that way, because when someone takes their life, they leave this devastating path of hurt for years and actually generations to come. I can understand how that could seem selfish, but I think it's absolutely um, lacking empathy and a means of being out of touch with your emotions to suggest that someone that committed suicide was selfish. They simply couldn't take it here anymore. They didn't reach out. They didn't have the tools. They didn't know how to handle things, and so they did the best they could do. And that is not a selfish thing. That is just something we don't understand what that person was feeling. So I just hope and pray we're not judging someone for having made that horrible decision. And if you're someone who was left behind by a loved one, I just hope and pray you will find forgiveness in your heart for what that person has done and left you with. Particularly if it was a parent. I think about a friend of mine who killed herself and left behind 4 children and a husband who loved her dearly. And they must at some level think, didn't she love me? Is it my fault? Was I not good enough for her to live for? And it really has nothing to do with them. And I know at times when I felt suicidal, I was completely out of touch with how much I loved other people. My pain was so bad. I could not think of how much I loved my children or my family. All I could think of was the pain. And so if you've been left in that path, just please try and empathize for that person who left you behind and forgive them. And I know that's got to be hard. Anyone, again, who's blamed you for their suicide, I want to remind you that hurting people hurt people. And so that was a hurting person, and they wanted to hurt you before they left. And don't you dare wear that pain that they shot at you. Some people say that suicide is something that prevents someone from getting to heaven. Now, that is some church rhetoric. I've read the Bible pretty thoroughly, and I don't know the whole thing, but I've read a lot of it, and never once have I ever seen anything that said suicide is your ticket to hell. And so that's, in my opinion, some church came up with that idea to frighten people from committing suicide. And I think certainly we don't want anyone to commit suicide, but what it does is it leaves people whose loved ones who have committed suicide wondering, oh gosh, did they go right to hell? No, they did not. Okay, not according to the Bible. So if you're in a church that suggests that, you can go and connect with your pastor and say, hey, I'm not 100% sure this is right. Show it to me in the Bible. And I think they'll be a little bit dumbfounded. It's not there. It does not say that. There is always hope. So I'm going to tell you a little personal story. So I had a friend of mine who is really, really an interesting story. She was a really good friend of mine. When my boys were little, she had young boys, and we had so much fun. And she was a role model for me in raising boys. It was hard. I didn't know how to raise these boys. And so one day we had really lost touch. She kind of moved across town. And one day I heard the Lord say, Charlotte, call her up. And I'm like, okay, I tend to be obedient when God calls me to do something. So I pulled my Suburban over and I picked up the phone. I looked up her number and I called, and there was an answering machine, and her name was Sissy. And I said, hey, Sissy, this is Charlotte. And the Lord just filled me with all these beautiful things to say to her. I was like, Sissy, I just wanted to tell you what an incredible role model you were for me and how much I valued you leading me and how to be a boy mom. And I mean, just on and on and on, all this stuff came pouring out of me. And then I said goodbye and I hung up. And a couple days later, she called me back and she said, hey, wow, Charlotte, so great to hear from you. Did you hear what happened to me? And I said, no. And she had, from what I understand her telling me, was she had gone to Africa she was just a little bambino, and she was a real tennis pro, and she was teaching tennis in Africa to someone, and she wanted to go on a safari, and she hadn't been inoculated to go on a safari. The inoculations to go to Africa are like, 6 weeks in advance. It's all this thing. And so she told me she was like going from doctor to doctor for someone who would give her the medicine so she could go on the safari. And so she found one who said fine, and she got the inoculations, and she got very, very sick. And one of the byproducts of what she received was actual suicide thoughts. And so she said that she had been in medical care, and had been really awful, and she'd faced really, really bad depression. She said it was really hard. Like she said, Charlotte, for me to go brush my teeth felt like I was swimming across the ocean. Everything was so difficult for her. And so I had no idea any of this, and I was really thankful she was sharing it with me. And she said she had been somewhere, and one of the nurses said to her, you're never going to get better. And you think about that somebody would ever tell you you're never going to get better. Now that's someone who doesn't know the Lord, doesn't know what God can do. God can raise the dead. God can heal anything. And for someone to say you're never going to get better, that's a lie. So my Bible verse this week is John 8:31-32. If you hold to my teachings, then you are truly my disciple, and you will know the truth, and the truth will set you free. And, getting in the Word of God and understanding that there is always hope, there is always healing, is something that is wonderful. Well, Sissy didn't do that. And 2 weeks after I had that phone call with her, she hopped off a tower in Gettysburg, Pennsylvania, and left behind her 4 children and her husband and a world of friends and people that she had influenced. And all I can say is that I love her, and I don't blame her. I'm not mad at her, and it's been hard to reconcile it, and I feel so much for her children, but I don't at all feel like I could have done something to prevent it or anything like that. And I don't think she went to hell, anything like that. So it's been a real personal opportunity for me to really face suicide with losing my buddy. In most cases, they say suicide is preventable, and that there are warning signs of suicide. So if you see someone in your life who talks about harming themselves or talks about suicide or death often, if they seek out things like weapons or drugs or something that they would use to commit suicide, someone that you might see who's feeling completely helpless, full of guilt or shame, someone who is just consumed with anxiety or very, very agitated, someone who might be making a will at an inappropriate time or getting things in order at an age or something, a stage in life where that might not be appropriate. Those might be warning signs. Other warning signs might be major mood swings, changes, outgoing person becoming introverted or withdrawn. Someone who is typically very well behaved might suddenly be rebellious. That might be a warning sign. Major changes in their daily habits, in the way they eat, or a type of sleeping disorder might be a warning. Taking greater risks, driving really fast, or maybe not wearing a seatbelt, just doing things that are pretty drastic. Someone who might be feeling trapped. And I know a lot of people in my life who are in abusive marriages. People come to me often in that situation after having been through one myself, feeling trapped. And I just want to tell you, if that's you, you're never trapped. And God gave an out with allowed divorce. He actually allowed divorce. And so if you're in a marriage or in a relationship where you're being made to think you have to stay there, and what an abuser will do is threaten you and say, you don't have a future, you don't have a hope, nobody else will want you, you're going to be broke. The abuser knows all your fears because they've earned your trust, and you shared them with you, and now they're going to come back at you against you. And I'm telling you, if that's you, those are lies. Once again, stay in the Word of God and know the truth. No, those are lies. You are not trapped in any relationship. And I know you may feel it. You are not. God will provide for you. He is a provider, Jehovah Jireh. So common suicide factors are mental illness, depression, a history of trauma or abuse. And I'm telling you, I don't know anyone, honestly, who hasn't faced these things. Previous suicide attempts, a family history of suicide, alcoholism or drug abuse, terminal illness or chronic pain. I think that's hard. I don't know what it's like really to be terminally ill. I did have cancer, but it was treated, and I never really thought I wouldn't heal from it. And so I don't know what it's like to face terminal illness. And but that is something that might cause someone to be suicidal. Um, Social isolation and loneliness, gosh, again, not something I'm too familiar with, but I understand there's just this bullying on social media, or these kids in school, or this expectation to be someone that you're not. Or I think the biggest drawback of social media is people sitting back and looking at other people's pages and saying, wow, their life is so great. And no, their life is not so great. The moment that they took the picture and they put it up there maybe was great, or maybe it was fake. I see people all the time. We go to events like, come on, let's get our little picture so we can show the world that we're all perfect and everything. I hate that stuff. I'm like, I don't want to, don't ask me to do that, please, unless it's genuine. If we're in an event and we're having fun, no one take pictures for sure, but I don't want to have that mandatory picture to put out on Facebook so people can see what I'm doing. And anyway, that just makes me sick in my stomach personally. But that being said, if you're someone sitting behind your computer and looking at someone else's Facebook page and thinking, oh, their life is so perfect, it is not. It is not perfect. No one's life is perfect. And anyway, don't believe that if you can. Okay, someone who has had a recent stressful event or a loss might be more apt to be having suicidal thoughts. So there are things you can do to help if someone in your sphere is feeling suicidal. You can ask questions, and this is new for me. It is okay. Let's say you've got someone in your world and you're noticing these things, maybe they've mentioned it, or these things are going on that I just mentioned. You can go to them and say, hey, how are you doing? Are you feeling suicidal? That is not going to cause them to be suicidal. That's not going to exacerbate their condition. It is simply going to give them an opportunity to answer you. And maybe they're going to say, actually, yeah, maybe they have been feeling suicidal. And so one of the number one things is to go ahead and ask them. Don't be afraid to ask if they're contemplating suicide. Studies show that this does not affect suicides or thought. Keep them safe. So if someone has a plan, and so ask them, all right, so let's say you say, are you have you been thinking about suicide? They might say yes. Go ahead and say, what were you thinking about it? How would you do that? Let's say, well, I was thinking about overdosing or shooting myself or whatever, right? Then you can go ahead and kind of help set the stage and kind of remove that item that might have been in their litany, maybe, or their ideas of how to commit suicide. You can kind of put a block in there if you can. That's one thing you can do to help. Another thing you can ask to be like, how do you hurt? You don't know how they're feeling. It's okay to say, how are you hurting? Or how can I help? And just by talking about it, just brings it out into the open. People say we are as sick as our darkest secrets. And so it's okay to talk about it. And it's not a real popular thing. It's so interesting to me tonight as I sit here tonight, and nobody really wants to be here live with me talk about this subject. I mean, maybe they don't want to know that I know it's on their mind. Maybe they're going to go back and watch it later. I am sure that's going to happen, but it's a taboo topic. It's got a stigma with it, and we need to break through that. We need to say, hey, how are you feeling? You can ask someone, have you already tried to kill yourself? And Or have you already done something, to do that? And find out, that's okay to ask that. And I've had people tell me that before, and there's so much shame with it, especially as a coach. I hear it pretty frequently. Like, many, really just people that I've coached have said I've tried to commit suicide, and it's just that they're really people you wouldn't think that of. And so, it's just not, I just like sitting there judging them or have a stigma against it. I'm like, okay, so have I. So I get it. So, but have you, asking, so what have you done to try and commit suicide? Just asking about it. This just seemed like really awkward questions. But when I read about how helpful it is, I thought, okay, I'm going to do this if I'm in that situation again. Do they have a specific detailed plan? Do you have a plan to kill yourself? What sort of access do you have to that method? I mean, these are tough questions, and yet you can see how they would be effective. And I never really thought to ask them before, but I'm gonna ask them now. Next time somebody tells me this, and I'm sure they will. As a coach, again, I hear it. Make sure that you take their answers seriously and do not ignore them. And so that is something that is hard to do. Because sometimes we just don't have the bandwidth. Somebody tells us something serious or critical, we don't like know what to do, and so sometimes we let it fly by or whatever. But I think what I've learned through doing this research is if I'm understanding someone's suicidal, I'm going to drop kind of what I'm doing, connect with them, and find out more and listen to them. And so one thing I've learned in coaching is just sometimes just giving someone space to get things out of their head is so cathartic. And so we all have the capacity to listen. And so, just making sure you're not scared if somebody gets you, reveals that information to you, and taking time to listening to their reasons for being in such emotional pain. Why are you in so much pain? And listen, as well as listening to their potential reasons that they want to continue to stay alive. Why would you want to stay alive? That's okay to ask that. Remind them, bring it back to mind. They're incredibly important when they're telling you. Help them focus on the reasons for living and trying to, but don't impose your reasons for living. So that's something, again, I would have learned in coaching, like, tell me some reasons that you would want to live. And my reasons might be totally different, but I need to listen to their reasons, and I need to support them in that. So, okay, be there for them. Listen to their feelings and what they're thinking. And having difficult conversations can actually prevent suicide. So, okay, this is very good advice. On the other hand, it is not your responsibility for someone's life. And so if you're in connection with someone and they're feeling suicidal, do the best you can do to listen and ask these questions. I think what I've given you advice, there's great websites that I put actually on this post, and but it is not your responsibility. So you can pass it on. You can call the suicide prevention hotline if someone has told you they want to kill themselves and get some advice. So you're not responsible for their life, but if you could be a friend, that's great. Help them connect with others. Give them resources. One of the best things someone did for me one time was take me somewhere, offer to go somewhere. I needed to do something really hard one time, and I had a friend say, "Hey, can I go with you to do this?" And I was like, oh, this has to happen. It was really, I ended up going by myself, but it was clear to me because she was willing to stop what she was doing and go with me, that it was very, very important. Just again, I said before, be aware of abusers. If someone is in your life and they're saying, I'm going to kill myself, and they're threatening you, that is manipulative, and that is not your responsibility. And that I think the things that I've given you before this, I don't think that those apply to you. If I were with someone who was threatening to kill themselves and blaming me on it, I would put up a wall, and I would go the other way and let somebody else be someone to love on that person. I need to protect myself in that situation. And if they followed through with it and killed themselves and said it was my fault, I am healthy enough to know that is not true. And so that is because I have done work. So anyway, okay. So one thing I'm going to suggest here is my journal, my soul work journal, because you want to be strong in yourself. You want to have a core strength in your soul so that you are equipped to handle others. And I'm equipped to handle others because I do my own work. I wasn't at one point. At one point I was not in a position that I could be there for someone else because I was so out of balance with myself. So this is a journal that will take you through steps getting to know yourself spiritually, environmentally, emotionally, and physically. And I highly suggest it. You can order it at my website, charlottesoul.com. I am a life coach and I would love to be there for you. But if you need a counselor, I am not a counselor. So please keep that in mind too. And also I'm a speaker. And if you are looking for a speaker for an event, I would love to come. I could come and do a self-care workshop and, or do a keynote speech, whatever you need. And so anyway, sign up for my mailing list so you get my blogs at charlottesoul.com. And I am going to take a minute before I sign off here and pray for you. Dear Heavenly Father, I just have touched such a very topic that is so challenging, Lord, and really touches so many of us, God, but none of us really want to talk about it. We don't want to talk about those that we love that have committed suicide. We don't want to talk about those that we've respected. I mean, Kate Spade or, Anthony, I can't pronounce his name, but Lord, or just, someone in our life, and it's just maybe a neighbor or maybe a friend or maybe someone from church or maybe a parent, maybe a grandparent. I don't know, God. And I just ask that you would be with each person watching this, Lord. You know exactly how they feel, Lord. And I ask that you would speak truth into their lives, Lord. And whether it is their own pain or someone else's pain, Lord, but that you would also help each one of us to stay healthy, Lord, and that we would have the core strength within our soul, that we could be sources of light and a beacon of light and sources of strength for those who are hurting, God, and around us, Lord. Lord, I just ask you to bless everyone and be with them. And until we meet again, amen. I will see you next Monday. Take care.